knowing that the race for Republican and Democrat nominations is heating up. Yes, Donald Trump seems to be leading those nominations for the Republicans, and former U.S. First Lady and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton seems to be heading up the Democrats when it comes to that race there. To speak to us a little bit more about this and what it means for South Africa is Associate Editor of the Daily Maverick, Brooks Spector. Brooks, a very good morning to you. Happy New Year. I think that's why I'm fumbling over your name. I haven't spoken to you in a long time.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to you and Happy New Year. And it is hot.
It's hot. It is very hot. But another thing that is hot is the elections race that is taking place. Donald Trump, I don't know if I even need to necessitate a question around that. I'll just say Donald Trump, and you just need to take it from there.
Yeah, well, he is quite an extraordinary figure in American politics. He's not a career politician by any stretch of the imagination. He's a property developer and a builder, first in New York City and now pretty much everywhere. But what he has done is he's carved a niche for himself as what I call a populist and someone who is channeling all the fears and anxieties of people. And as a result, given his extraordinary and outlandish statements about foreigners, about his opponents, about Islam and its place in the world and the United States, he's managed to build on the resentments and the anxieties of many people to become, at least on the face of it, the leading contender in the Republican Party. And the real story, of course, is that the race actually begins now. The first caucuses and primaries in the Republican Party start at the end of this month. And so this will now be the first time that people actually vote for their favored candidates rather than simply responding to phone calls by polling agencies. Mm-hmm. And this may put a different spin on it.
He seems to be extremely radical and quite unpredictable and perhaps even unsavory when it comes to comments about minorities and different ethnicities, etc. So I can't help but wonder what the scenario would be like for South Africa were he to be the next president of the U.S.
Well, it would be awkward for South Africa, perhaps, but it'd be a lot more awkward for the United States. The one thing I would say is the odds on his actually becoming the Republican nominee and becoming the president are very, very big. In the first caucus, which takes place in Iowa, I should explain that a caucus is where actual people who say they're going to be members of the Republican Party mm-hmm. gather in school halls and church halls and community halls, and they pick the delegates from that state who then get to go to the national convention in July. And so there are still close to a dozen people in the Republican Party who would like to be the nominee. And in Iowa, Donald Trump is not actually leading in the initial polling about where people mm-hmm. would go as a candidate. That honor falls to Republican Senator from Texas, Ted Cruz. He's not what I would refer to as a wild-eyed leftist, but he is definitely not given to quite the same excesses that Donald Trump has offered on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm. And of course, naturally, he would butt heads with Hillary Clinton, who is trying to make sure that she tops the nominations list for the Democrats. She is the only female, correct me if I'm wrong, who is a front runner for the Democrats. But there's been a lot of controversy surrounding her as well, and the work that she did previously in government. Those around her saying she's a bully, those saying that she dropped the ball on a number of fronts. What do you make of her campaign thus far?
Well, her biggest challenge, of course, is she's been in the public eye for over 30 years.
And there's probably nobody in the country who doesn't already have an opinion about Hillary Clinton. And as a result, her real biggest challenge is to present the best possible face in the presence of all those strong opinions. And I mean, I personally think that her record as Secretary of State was certainly a reasonable one. Her record as a senator from the state of New York for 8 years or so, what was similarly a reasonable record, and the fact that she is female should give her something of a bump in the selection process, and she would have been inevitable for the Democrats, except that Bernie Sanders, a fairly strong leftist senator from the small state of Vermont, chose to run against her. And he's presenting the Democrats with this real choice, both of whom were about the same age.
Oh my goodness.
And have been in the public eye for a long time.
Brooks, let me come in there now and speak about the importance of South Africa-US relations. They've been, I think, really frosty. You know, I mean, the media will try and camouflage it, but the fact that we're really friendly with Russia and China perhaps leaves a bit of a bitter taste there in the mouths of the Americans, unlike the tea that you're sipping now. But let's talk a little bit about the importance of those relations, especially focusing on AGOA. We know Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies has confirmed that all outstanding issues threatening the renewal of AGOA between South Africa and the United States have been resolved. But what do you make of that particular agreement and our relationship going forward?
Well, I mean, the agreement was not an AGOA agreement. AGOA, of course, as you know, was a unilateral trade offering by the United States to all African countries to export their goods to the United States duty-free and tariff-free. But because of South Africa's economic circumstances, there was opposition to South Africa's continued participation in the face of trade restrictions by South Africa on a limited range of American products, specifically, in this case, chicken, beef, and pork. And it took them rather longer than anybody expected to figure out how to deal with those restrictions and sort out the arrangements to allow American exports of 65,000 tons of chicken parts. I don't think that chickens should be the be-all and end-all of the U.S.-South Africa trade relationship. There's billions of dollars of other exports from South Africa to the United States.
Especially not when you put it like that. I don't think chickens should be the be-all and end-all of trade relations in South Africa. I know you know, and I know that it is very broad. But yes, I do thank you for your time. It's always such a pleasure to have you with us. Associate Editor of the Daily Maverick, Brooks Spector, and our go-to guy, I think, as well for U.S. affairs. It's always good to chat to him. And we'll continue to do so. Even as that race continues to heat up, we'll chat to him from time to time just to get a regular update on what's happening there.